Hi there, this is Tracy Kiernan from stepbysteppainting.net, and this acrylic painting tutorial will show you how to paint a menorah. I'm doing this on an 11 by 14 inch canvas with acrylics, and I'm going to go ahead and start by loading my palette with two colors. I have titanium white and turquoise blue. And I'll be using this 3/4 inch flat wash brush. This background consists of a blended background that starts with a bright white and blends to a turquoise. So I'm going to load my brush in the white first, and I'm going to paint a circle in the middle of the canvas. I have a fair amount of white on my brush because I'm going to be doing a lot of blending here, so I want to make sure I have a nice wet layer of paint to work with. So I'm just adding this sort of circle or blob right in the middle of the canvas. I'm going to go ahead and add 2 coats in there because I know that I'm going to need a whole lot of white to get this turquoise to blend. When I'm ready for the turquoise, I'm going to load a little bit on my brush and kind of wipe it off on the palette a little bit. I'm going to add my turquoise on the outer part of that white circle. I'm going to paint in circles, and I'm going to gently blend that into the white. So I'm just working that color on the canvas to get it blend right there. I grabbed a little bit more white on my brush because I want to make sure that that center is super bright. So a little bit more white in there, and that center is going to turn into more of a light turquoise. It's not going to be pure white. I mean, if you want to leave it pure white, you can, but it's going to be mostly a light turquoise color. And then I'm just going to keep painting in circles and working my way outwards. As you work your way outwards, grab more turquoise on the brush and not so much white. So I have the turquoise here, and I'm just painting in circular strokes around there and getting the color to blend on the canvas. So you see how there's a drastic difference in that dark and light. So what you do is just grab some more white on your brush and then paint circular strokes. You don't want to get that center too dark. So if you need to wipe your brush off, you can. So if it's overloaded, wipe it off and then grab the white and add the white in the center and just blend it out. And then continue on with some more turquoise. So if you need your water to or your paint to flow a little bit better, you can dip your brush in a little bit of the water, and that'll boost the flow a little bit. And just keep applying that turquoise in circular strokes, and you can occasionally grab a little bit of white in there. Just a few streaks of white create some interesting effects in the background. So I usually do this background for like a sky if there's a moon in the sky, but this is just kind of an abstract background, so it doesn't have to be a perfect blend. It can just be kind of abstract, and it just kind of looks interesting with the 2 colors and the blend in, and it really helps the design of the menorah pop in this painting. So don't get too caught up on the background. I know it's kind of a challenge to blend the colors like this, but just do the best you can. When you get to the corner parts, you want to make sure that your strokes are still going circular, so we don't want to change it to up and down or horizontal. You just want to keep painting in circles, even though that circle definitely goes off the canvas. And really on the edges, it's more pure turquoise. There's hardly any white over there. If you wanted to add a few strokes of white, you can just grab the white. The white blends in really fast with that turquoise color. I think this might be the first time I'm using this turquoise color. This is the Liquitex Basics Turquoise Blue, and this is one of their newer colors they actually released in the basics, and it's very similar to a phthalo blue. So if you don't have that exact color, you can try bright aqua green. It might look really pretty with bright aqua green, but the bright aqua green is a lot lighter than this turquoise. But you can try mixing maybe phthalo blue, like a darker blue, into your bright aqua green, and it'll kind of create that darker turquoise color. And so I'm just kind of filling this in, making sure everything is going circular, and a few strokes of white in there to give it some interesting effects. I'm just going to go ahead and go silent here for a little bit as I finish this step up. If the video seems like it's going too fast for you, press pause when you need to in order to catch up. Right here, I decided to be a little bit brave, knowing that that center part probably is dry and the paint's not workable, so I'm working really fast. But I just wanted to add a little boost of white right there in the middle, and I'm just kind of taking that and blending it out, knowing that it's not going to blend all the way, but I kind of like the streaky look of it, so I was just going for it right there. If it's dry for you and you still kind of wanted to add some lighter tones in the center, you can still add it like as a second coat. So start with the white and just kind of gently blend in the turquoise again like you're doing a second coat. I wouldn't overwork it, because if you overwork it, it might end up kind of all meshing together and we don't have the two-tone look anymore. It's just all blended together. So try not to overdo the background and try not to overthink the background. I know, easier said than done, because I tend to overthink a lot of things in my painting. So, okay, so I think we are done with the background. This needs to dry before we do the drawing part. So you can use a hair dryer or take like a 30-minute break and come back. But here is my painting that is dry and ready to be drawn on. And I'm going to use a white chalk pencil to draw the menorah design. And you can use a piece of chalk, a piece of white chalk, or even a regular drawing pencil. And so the first thing I'm going to do is start in the middle and draw the middle bottom of the canvas, and draw a half circle. The half circle was about 2 inches wide, maybe 4 inches, 2 inches high, 4 inches wide. So a half circle for the base. And then I'm going to draw kind of a stretched out circle on top of that. And then I'm going to draw a rectangle on top of that. So I'm using this T-square ruler, and these are really helpful because you can line it up to the edge of the canvas to get your nice vertical line in there. And so I'm just doing this rectangular shape in the center of that circle that we drew. And I suppose it's a little less than 1 inch wide for that rectangle. And I can go ahead and make it kind of darker with my pencil so you can see it better on the camera. And then on top of that, I'm going to do a half circle, kind of an upside down half circle on top of that rectangle. And so that's going to be our center piece where the center candle is going to be. And then we're going to have 4 candles on the left and the right of that. So I'm going to take my T-square, and I'm going to line it up horizontally and kind of find sort of a center area on that rectangle piece that we drew. And I'm going to draw 2 lines. So I'm going to do the first line. And I'm not going to go all the way to the edge of the canvas, although if you want to go all the way to the edge of the canvas, you can. I'm going to try to make it even, kind of use my hand to measure it. But if you want to go all the way to the edge, you can. But this menorah design does not go all the way to the edges, if that makes sense. So there's our horizontal piece that our candles will be situated on. And then I'm going to go ahead and draw the spiral design that's kind of attached under it. So we have one large spiral, and then we have kind of a smaller one that's attached to the larger one. And then we'll kind of do our best to make it symmetrical, although it doesn't have to be perfect. And so I did the large one, grabbed my T-square ruler right here, and noticed that definitely not even there. So I'm going to kind of line that up a little bit better. So that's what's really nice about using these T-squares, to make sure things are lined up if you need them to be lined up, or you can have it be kind of off, not exactly a mirror image. So then we have our smaller piece. Then I'm going to go ahead and kind of erase that other one to make it more even. I love these chalk pencils, and the erasers work so nice on them. They go very nicely on canvas paintings over a dark background. They don't really work that well on the lighter background. So I got my larger spiral in there, and then I'll kind of make this darker right here and erase your lines if they kind of look sketchy. But I'm going to go ahead and kind of do these two vertical lines on the left and the right, because I know that's where my two outer candles will be. And then I went ahead and I drew the center candle. So that center candle is going to be my taller candle. And I did that first just to get kind of a base of envisioning that these other candles are going to be smaller. So I did the center one with the flame, so kind of a vertical sort of shape. And these ones are going to be situated on their own base. So I want to do 4 rectangles, and I want to kind of make sure that they all fit in there. So had to erase it real quick because I realized they weren't all going to fit. So get those 4 sort of rectangle shapes in there. And then on top of each of those rectangle shapes, there is a smaller half circle. And that half circle, that top half circle piece that I'm drawing, the top part lines up with the centered half circle we did, that larger one in the center. So they all kind of line up there. So we have 4 rectangles with 4 smaller half circles on top of each rectangle. Now, I didn't draw the candle on each of these. I only drew one candle, and I'm using that as kind of like a visual guideline for myself, because I didn't really feel like drawing all the candles. I knew I was going to paint them in. But if you feel more comfortable drawing all your candles in, by all means, you can draw all the candles in. And so you want to do the same thing on the other side as well. So your 4 rectangular shapes with 4 half circles, and notice the candle, the top part of the candle kind of curves down like it's melted, and so it's not like a actual rectangle straight line at the top. It curves downwards, and that's going to be important when we paint it in. It's going to create the effect that the flame is kind of melting the candle. And so that's it for the drawing part, and we're going to go ahead and move on to painting the actual menorah part. So this part's really fun. We're going to load our palette with some Mars Black, and we'll be using a number 4 round brush. So actually this is a number 8 round brush. It's a little bit larger than that 4, but I'm going to go ahead and load my brush in water and kind of use that water that's on my brush to go ahead and slightly water down my black. Mars Black tends to be a really thick color, so watering it down will make this step a lot easier for you. And I'm basically just going to paint the entire base of the menorah in, as well as all the swirled lines, and basically everything but the candles are going to be painted in black. If you go outside your chalk lines, that's okay. If you don't paint it all the way in because you're kind of adjusting your shape a little bit, that's okay. those chalk lines can be erased after the entire painting is finished. For some of these smaller areas, you may want to switch to a smaller brush. I was able to utilize this brush because it's got a nice point to it to get into some of the smaller areas. But if you're using a kind of a different kind of brush that doesn't have much of a point, you may have to kind of flip-flop and use a smaller brush for the smaller areas and the larger one for the larger areas. For these spirals, I kind of changed the pressure of my brush a little bit. So instead of it being the same consistency throughout, I kind of started out thin and then maybe some areas kind of put more pressure on your brush to make your spiral a little bit thicker. And you can use the tip of your brush to make some of the area of the spiral kind of thin. So, like, in other words, it's not the same thickness throughout. It kind of changes from thin to thick. And by doing that, it gives it a little bit of a whimsical touch to the spirals. And so just kind of go ahead and do that to both of them. The water really helps to get it to flow, and also twisting your brush into the paint really kind of gets the paint to distribute right there to the tip of the bristles. And then this horizontal line, if you need to use like an angle brush or a flat brush for this step, you can. Putting a lot of pressure on this round brush to get that line to be thick. Then I'm going to go in and paint the base of each of these candles. Again, if you need to switch to a smaller brush, you can do that, but I'm just going to paint the half circle shape and then the rectangular shape. Next, I am going to paint the candles, and they are all going to be a base color of titanium white. So loading titanium white onto my palette, and you can use any brush you want for this. I grabbed this brush. This is a number 8 flat brush. So it's kind of a smaller sort of flat brush, but because it's a flat brush, it's going to help us create that rectangular shape in the candle. and I loaded my brush in the water, and I'm just kind of distributing it into this titanium white. So I know my candles are not white, but I need to do the base layer of them white so that whatever color they're going to be is going to stand out and be nice and bright against the background. So I'm just going to paint my first candle in, the one that I drew with the chalk pencil, just to get kind of a base of what my candles are going to look like. And then so I just want to make sure that the top piece is kind of curved downwards, so I can kind of change the angle of this brush to get kind of a curved stroke in there. Then I'm just going to go ahead and paint the rest of the candles in, just kind of eyeballing what my first candle looked like. And one thing that I sort of stressed out about when doing these candles is trying to make them all the same height. If you want them to all be the same height, you can get your T-square ruler, kind of maybe draw a line across or kind of use it as a guideline. But as I started doing this, I realized it kind of looked neat with having the candles be not all the same height, so slightly varied. And because if the flames were all kind of melting the candles at different rates, that would be why that candles would not all be exactly the same height. So it's up to you if you want them to be all the same height or not. And like I said, I think it kind of gives it character not having them all be in uniform. But I did want to emphasize the center candle. So I make sure that, or I chose to make sure the center candle was larger, so larger as in wider, but also slightly higher than the other candles. And so you can see the T-square, they're not all lined up. The one on the left is a little shorter, but that's okay. I was okay with that. And so here's my center one. It is slightly wider than the other ones and also taller. And then you just want to kind of go in and paint the other four candles as well. And then also the center piece, it kind of curves. You can have them all curving at like different angles so that the wax would melt them in different angles. They wouldn't all be uniform. But like I said, if you want them to all be uniform, you can do it that way instead. These white candles need to dry before adding color onto them, so I'm going to go ahead and paint the base layer of our flame. I loaded my palette with Cadmium Orange Hue, and this is a number 4 round brush. So I'm just going to take this orange and paint a flame shape that's floating above each of my candles. So it's just a basic teardrop shape that goes to a point. And this orange is very see-through, which is actually going to work into our favor here because when this orange dries, we'll be adding some brighter layers onto it. So this is just the first layer of the flame, and just going to go ahead and do this same shape on all of them. So you may have drawn your flame in if you drew all your candles in, and so you just paint that shape in. Check your white to see if it's dried. Mine dried pretty fast, but if it's not dry, you can take a hair dryer or kind of take a break and come back. But it doesn't have to be completely 100% dry, but dry enough to add a coat of paint over it. So I have red. This is Cadmium Red Medium Hue. And this is a number 8 round brush. So the same brush I used to paint the white base, I'm just going to go ahead and use that again. And I'm going to paint whatever candle I want to be the red. So I'm choosing to have 2 of my candles be red. And I'm just taking this red and filling in the shape. And this shading thing is optional. If you're simplifying this design, you don't have to do this. But if you like the shading, I'll show you what to do with the red. We're going to add a little bit of black to the red to do the shading thing. But I'm going to go ahead and fill this one in red as well. So I only did 2 red candles. And I didn't do a pattern or anything like that. Just kind of random 2 red candles. And to do the shading thing, you want to just add a teeny tiny bit of black, like barely any black on that brush, and kind of distribute it on the palette. It's going to make a very, very, very dark red, but it's going to allow us to take that color and kind of drag it on the left side of one of the candles to create shading. So I'm just kind of flicking my brush and dragging that darker color into the red, but not all the way because I only want the shadow on the left side. And I'm going to do it again to this one here. So I'm taking that dark color and starting on the left side of the candle and just dragging it towards the middle and just kind of blending that. And then we have the darker part on the left side of that candle as well. And then I'm going to repeat this step with my next color. So this is deep violet, and of course rinse that brush off because we don't want black and red into our violet color. But so I'm going to rinse it off, and I'm going to pick 2 more candles to paint that color, the deep violet color. And then I'll do the shading thing the same way. I'll use the black to do the shading for the purple. And then I'm going to do the shading thing. So a teeny tiny bit of black on there and kind of drag it out on the palette a little bit. And then just take the chisel, the tip of your brush, and just kind of drag that darker color from the left to the right. You can kind of do like a curved stroke since the candle is curved. So you can take your brush and kind of curve it with the shape of the candle, so it doesn't have to be exactly horizontal. My candle over here kind of got misshaped, so I just grabbed a little bit of white with that purple to kind of outline that area right there. And then so the next part, or the next color I'm going to be using, is the green. This is Hooker's Green Hue Permanent, and get that brush all rinsed off so that there's no purple into the green. And then go ahead and pick 2 more candles that you want to paint. So I just picked this one over here on the left, and getting that green to go over the white. And I did this candle green as well. And then, of course, I did the shading thing with the green too, with a tiny bit of black in the green. Like I said earlier, if you don't want to do the shading thing, or if you're trying to simplify this, maybe you're doing this with your child and you don't really want to make it complicated, the design itself works without having all the highlight and shading thing. You can definitely simplify it. If you wanted to have all your candles be the same color, you can choose to do that. If you wanted to leave your candles white, you can do that. So there's really a lot of options you can do with this painting. But I love color and I love the look of all the candles with different colors. And I think they really pop against that turquoise background. And then the last color that I'm going to load on my palette is Ultramarine Blue. And this is a darker blue, so it'll stand out against that turquoise. It's nice and dark. So I did my next two candles with that turquoise, but I also did my center candle, not turquoise, ultramarine blue. I also did my center candle with the ultramarine blue too. And then I did the shading thing again with the blue on the left side and with the black on the left side. And then I'm going to go ahead and paint my center candle. So I didn't rinse my brush off there. I decided, okay, well, maybe this one will be slightly darker. So I left that black on my brush. Didn't really make much of a difference. I didn't do the shading thing on this blue one. I kind of just left that step out. But if you wanted to add shading to the center one, you can do that as well. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse everything off. And I'm going to do another step. Again, you can choose not to do this. It's a little advanced, but I want to add some lighter areas. So we had darker areas on our candle. We're going to do lighter areas next. I'm going to use, this is a number 4 round brush and titanium white. I'm just going to, at the top of the candle, I'm going to paint kind of a white curve on the top of the candle. So this is kind of my start of the lighter part, and you'll see what I'm going to do here in a second. But I'm just taking that white and doing white on the curved part on the top of each of the candles. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this blending thing. So I'm going to grab the color of the candle. So on my brush I have the white, and I grabbed a little bit of that ultramarine blue. And I'm just going to kind of take that and kind of drag it down. It gives that candle a little bit of a lighter area at the top, but also maybe gives some indication that there's some wax kind of melting down the candle. So however you want to perceive that, but it ultimately it's giving that candle a kind of a lighter sort of area. And it's abstract. I'm not trying to paint a realistic looking candle or anything like that. But over here on this ultramarine blue, I'm just grabbing the white with the blue. So if you don't like mixing the colors on the palette, or if you don't like mixing the colors on the canvas, you can do it on the palette. So you can mix the white and the blue together to make a lighter blue, and use that lighter blue for your highlight color at kind of the top right area of the candle, and kind of drag it down the same way that I was doing it. So I'm going to do that technique to each of the colors. So this is the red, and I grabbed white and I mixed that white with the red. I'm going to start at the top and kind of do that sort of the same thing on the top right part and just kind of drag it down. And I'm just going to repeat that for my other red candle. Then I'm going to rinse off and go on to the next color. So this is the deep violet mixed with the white, and kind of do the same thing. So kind of start at the top, sort of drag that color downwards and have that be the lighter part of the candle. And then doing the same thing with the green as well. So adding the white into the green, grabbing that and kind of painting kind of downward strokes in the upper right area of the candles. The next thing we're going to do is add another layer to our flame. So this is a super fun part. It's very easy, but it really provides the stunning results of the flame. So mixing a little white into that yellow is going to brighten that yellow up and also make it a little bit more opaque so that it'll stand out against that orange. But I'm just going to take this is the number 4 round brush. I'm just going to take that and add a shape kind of a flame shape on the inside of all of those flame shapes, but I don't want to completely cover the orange. I want to make sure that the outer outline of that flame is still orange. So I have a inner layer, and you can see what's happening. It's already starting to brighten that flame up a bit. And then we can take this a step further. You may have to kind of let that dry a little bit if this isn't going to work, but I'm going to take that a step further and with the white, and so it's working for me. I'm just taking my white and adding one stroke on the inside of each of those flames. So just one white stroke right there on the inside, and that'll make your flame look nice and bright and super pretty. And we've got our flames in. So if you want the flames to kind of look like they're floating, that's okay. But I decided to do the wick, the black wick line. So this is just a number 4 round brush, and you want to load black right there on the tip of your brush. So it's a really, really thin line. You may have to grab a really smaller, tiny round brush if your 4 round doesn't have that point to it. So a really tiny brush is going to do the trick here. But I'm just taking my line and adding it, painting it in. And you can kind of make some of the lines go a little bit diagonal. So they're not exactly perfectly vertical. But by doing that, it kind of makes it look like the flame is kind of going in different directions. So that creates an interesting effect with the wick. Right here, I decided to add some more light blue tones in some of the blue candles. So this is ultramarine blue that I'm doing mixed with a little bit of titanium white. And I just kind of went in there and added a little bit of a touch up right there on the top part of the candle. A little bit of a pop of white right there. So that candle is glowing the very top portion of that candle. And I did it to the other ultramarine blue colors as well. The next thing I'm going to do is add a highlight line on my menorah base. So this is a number 4 round brush loaded with titanium white. And I'm doing very, very loose, subtle sort of highlighting, and very loose. So I'm not putting pressure at all on my brush. I'm holding this brush very, very lightly. I don't want this white to be super bright and strong. It needs to be very subtle. Like if the flames are just kind of slightly adding a little bit of a glow on the menorah base, and just on the right side of the bottom base of it, and a little bit on the spirals, but again, very subtle. We don't want to take over that black too much, just enough to give it a little bit of a glow. And then you could almost do this dry brush style. So you would load the brush in the white and then kind of wipe it off with a paper towel, and that'll really ensure that the white that you're painting is very dim and not so strong. For this final step, I'm going to show you how to paint the blurry lights, the bokeh. And I have a brush. This is kind of one of a cheap craft sort of brush, or an older brush. So preferably a brush that you know it's okay to kind of mess up a little. But I'm going to do these bokeh dry brush style. So I'm going to load my brush in the white and dry it off with a paper towel so that there's not a lot of white on my brush. And I'm just going to take it and kind of paint a circle with the brush. And we want to make our circle look like it's kind of fading away on the outer part. So naturally, so there's not a lot of paint on my brush to begin with. So I got to really kind of press hard on that, really kind of work the bristles. And that's okay, because we're going to maybe mess up our brush a little bit. But I'm putting a lot of pressure on my brush, kind of pushing down on those bristles super hard to create that effect. So this one right here, a little bit too bright. If that happens, if it's showing up too bright, just take your towel and wipe off more of that white. But I actually took that white, that big bright one, and kind of extended it and made it larger. So the trick with these bokeh is that you want different variations. So some of them are more intense and brighter, some of them are a lot more dimmer, some overlap each other. Some of them are smaller and kind of off the edge, so they're just kind of floating randomly around to create the effect. And that one right there was super dim, and the reason why it looks super dim is there wasn't a lot of paint on my brush. After I painted several dots and didn't reload my brush, there was only a little bit of paint left, so it allowed it to be nice and dim. And then so this one's a little bit brighter, so it kind of creates a different variation of lights and darks with the lights. And you can kind of go crazy with this and add them all over the place, but I thought it looked best if it was more subtle. So just a few lights kind of in the background, but not all over the place. You can also do this technique with foam pouncers. They're just little sponge circle things you kind of press and turn to create the shape. But if you saw my poinsettia tutorial, I did kind of the same thing, the little blurry lights, and I used the round brush and did the same kind of effect. So I continued it into this tutorial as well. I thought it created a different effect than what the sponges do. So it's kind of different. And then you can take your brush, you're really putting a lot of pressure on those bristles, putting it to work, but you can really kind of spread that paint out and let it blur. So that one was super bright. I just wiped my brush off again, and I'm just taking that and kind of blurring it out a little bit. And so those two are overlapping each other there. And then I made kind of a larger one over here as well. Let's see, like kind of a large and blurry one. And to get it to blur, just really pushing hard on that brush, getting it to spread out. I'll do a few more smaller lights and then I'll be finished with it. If you have any chalk lines that are still showing on your painting from the original drawing portion, you want to go ahead and, well, you want to wait for everything to dry before you erase. But when everything's dry, you can just take your eraser and erase any leftover chalk lines. It's also water soluble, so if you took a wet paintbrush, it will erase that way. I'm going to go ahead and sign my name with a number 0 round brush and some black, and that's it. This is the conclusion of how to paint a menorah. I had a lot of fun designing this one. I've been getting a lot of requests to release a Hanukkah painting, and I'm glad that I got it out just in time. And so if you painted this painting, you're welcome to share it in our Facebook group. If you don't know about our Facebook group, you can look up Step by Step Painting with Tracy Kiernan on Facebook and join our group so you can show all your beautiful paintings to everybody. But that's it. Thanks for watching.